having as good a time as any, assuming that Gemma Tognini is on the line. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Gemma Tognini from GT Media. How are you today?
Hello, I'm great, thanks guys. I really enjoyed listening to the intro to the show actually. I was furiously taking notes. It was great.
all our unanswered questions.
Well, to your last point about getting small, I mean, I remember so vividly the first week of, we call it the first week of COVID, of course, when we were all ordered to go home. And I watched an interview, a webinar that a very prestigious property developer called Iwan Sanito gave. And it was about, and it wasn't related to COVID, it was, I think, a year or so old, but he talked about what we do when, what you do in a crisis, and he gave some examples about how they manage their business in a property crisis. But in terms of focusing on who you are and what you do well, and focusing on that.
I think that's outstanding advice.
Back to basics.
Yeah, basically.
So tell us a bit, Gemma, about GT Media. I mean, you're the star of Western Australia, let's be honest.
No.
And
No. Well, I would be bi-coastal, but I'm locked in prison over here. So,
you're a PR firm, certainly with a fair bit of longevity behind it. Tell us how you fell into this.
I literally did fall. I was a TV journalist for my sins for 10 years, and I left my job. I quit my job in July of 2003, and I started a consultancy. And I remember thinking, I'd interviewed for a couple of jobs in-house, one advising for government media and a couple of in-house jobs. And I think I just had an itch that I wanted to scratch. I had done a little bit of consulting for others, and my previous role as a journalist and chief of staff, I'd sort of thought there's a niche in the market for a really boutique outfit that understands what makes news and why. And that's really where the business started. But I do remember quitting my job. We had my farewell party, and the very next day I was down my local shop. It was raining buckets because it gets very rainy here in Perth. And I was wearing a pair of tracky pants in public to communicate my state of mind at the time. And I remember thinking, what have I done? I had no idea what I was doing. And I think one of the things I learned straight up is, and maybe this is my father in particular, my father came to Australia on a boat when he was 10 years old. I just said yes to things and worked out how to do them later. And I was very lucky to have, I've never been the kind of person that is afraid to ask questions. So I was very lucky to have some generous mentors early in my consulting career. I mean, I remember saying, what's the strategy? What does that mean? It sounds really intimidating. And this friend of mine who was in a corporate comms role at the time said, oh, that's just a fancy way of saying what you're going to do and how. And I've always, when I'm teaching our junior team, that's what we say to them. It's just a fancy way of saying what we're going to do and how. So the business started really as primarily a media relations firm in the PR and publicity space, but very quickly became a full service comms business. So we have two streams in the company. One is corporate communications, which is everything from the full suite of corporate comms that a large corporate might have, and it could be investor stuff, although we tend to do less of the ASX stuff, but we certainly do investor relations, corporate communications, thought leadership, public profiling, that sort of stuff. That's where our issues management, our risk management practice sits. And then on the other side of the fence is our consumer and our retail practice, and we do everything from launching beer and yogurt and working with airports and fried chicken and some not-for-profits. So it's a really diverse business, but I guess at the heart of it is this concept that we build, we grow, and we protect reputations. So, yeah, it's nearly 17 and a bit years old, this business of mine. And like I said, we do have we've had national and international clients since the business was very young, but we are we've done a soft launch of our Sydney office. As soon as we can travel with a bit more freedom, that will cement. But I guess thanks COVID for teaching me that I can still be flexible and still be innovative. So we've opened softly, but looking forward to really servicing clients in a more meaningful way on the East Coast and hopefully making a mark the way we have done over here.
No, it's fantastic. I think you might have to catch a freight train and sneak into one of the trolleys on a freight train to get over to Sydney.
So
but we'll park that for now. So, okay, this is where I come to with PR. Sure. I think it can be done extraordinarily well, and Gemma will probably have some examples. The question I have is, how how does a well-defined PR strategy, how is that applied to not to building a brand on one side, like you sort of mentioned, yogurt and whatever else, but also getting out of a jam if you do misstep? How does that strategy work to get you into growth, but then also out of a jam when you misstep?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I wish I could say there was one solution, but there's not. I guess it comes down to a really simple phrase of who are you talking to and what are you trying to say to them. So if you're in a growth pattern or you're in a growth trajectory, so if a client comes to us and they say what they want to expand into a particular market, that will direct the strategy in a certain style.
We have a little video that we've pre-prepared, and it's got some bigger companies, a lot of them American admittedly, and some of their responses to COVID PR and what they're doing. I just wonder if super producer Rick has his finger on the button and could just give us a bit of a minute, and then maybe we'll review and come back around to what we were just talking about.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years.
In 90 years.
Over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin.
We will do what we've always done.
So Gemma, look, I'm no PR expert, but could you just give us maybe a minute or two on what kind of advice you might give to anyone in that current circumstance?
I love that clip. I had seen it before, I must confess, and I love it because it's absolutely everything. I didn't see a single piece of innovative communication during COVID. All I saw were businesses and brands and people framing their value within the paradigm of a crisis. So the minute that you say, in these uncertain times, for example, we're here for you, we're here for you. And then you think, well, what about all the other clients? How many of us got emails from, I got an email from an insurance company I don't recall having a policy with ever, saying, dear Gemma, this is our COVID safe plan. I don't care. And please stop spamming me. I mean, good for you for having a COVID safe plan, but don't need to hear it, don't want to hear it. And by the way, curate your database some more. There's
unsubscribe.
I saw so much sloppy communication in the last 6 months. It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing, and I think your point is really sound about defining your value and nailing it to any crisis. So obviously this is a crisis, but it's sort of narrowing it down from the longer term value strategy. I mean, we've talked about this before. You have a mild view on this.
No, but just the soft drink companies, we're not with you because you're COVID safe. We're with you because we like your bloody soft drink. Yeah. So don't try and shove something down my throat to make me feel warm and fuzzy. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's not genuine.
It's absolutely not genuine. And if you think about it, yes, it's a global pandemic. Yes, there have been seismic changes to the way we do business. But if you think about it in the context of any other crisis, would they be sending you their plan? Would the soft drink company be sending you their plan if, for example, there was catastrophic flooding?
Yep.
Coca-Cola is with you.
These are the mops. These are the mops that we use to clean our facilities.
Yeah. They just wouldn't do it. And I feel like there's so much Me Tooism about it. Yeah. And someone asked me, did you see any good comms during that initial COVID period in that creative, like external space? And I have to say, I really didn't see anything that took my attention.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. So if you were, now you're making the East Coast assault when you can. I mean, you might have to walk over, but don't get caught at the border. But what if you were to boil down one sort of piece of advice to businesses right now? I mean, we've just covered something a bit humorous, but what would it be right now, current day, zero now to Christmas sort of thing?
I would say right now, between now and Christmas, put all of your focus on doing what you do well. I don't understand why your clients are with you in the first place. That makes it very difficult to do. But assuming the business understands their value and understands why a client uses them and can stay with them, then nurture that and craft communication around that. Deliver value. I mean, continue to deliver value. Our culture, my business culture, is 100% around the relational for a variety of reasons, and that's not a trite thing to say. I mean, I've been in business, as I said, 17 and a bit years, and there's been 2 GFCs, and I remember the 2008 experience very well because my business was quite young, and in all honesty, that was more terrifying than COVID because clients literally cancelled mandates on within a week. It was just remarkable. They just cancelled and they cancelled, and you sort of have to go. My strategy at the time was, okay, consulting is a discretionary spend, right? So at this time, every client in our market was examining their spend and examining what they get for it. And we actually grew our revenue base in that 2008-2009 period because we presented a better value proposition from a relationship perspective. Like anyone, being competent at what you do is a base level deliverable. If you're not competent, get out of it, right? And you won't get work. So if you've got 4 or 5 competent consultancies, whether they're comms, whether they're legal firms, whether they're accounting, being competent is the starting point. But if you can do relationship well, and I don't mean I hate the word authentic, but it is about being real. Like, I'll give you an example. We called our clients during COVID. That first week we called them and said, are you okay? What do you need? What can we deliver to you that may be outside of our current scope? Don't worry about fees. We'll talk about that afterwards. We do relationship well. And that is, people don't think about that in the terms of communication strategy, whether it's corporate or consumer, but it's all about the relationship. It's about the relationship with customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're missing that, you're missing the whole point.
Agreed. Now, Gemma, you're a very experienced TV person. We are still relatively rookie. I think we've got about 3 minutes to run. And Laura Racky has a question for you, and the last question of the day.
Do I?
You do. I feel like it's your subject.
Go on, Gemma. Have at what's going on with the various state government, PR strategies. I'll just give you a piece of my view that Dan's strategy must be world class for everything that has come before and led us to this position the state is in, yet for everyone jumping up and down saying how wonderful his government is. So that's my starting point. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
You've got 2 minutes, Gemma.
So let me go really quickly. Best on ground after an initial stumble is Gladys Berejiklian, and they learned the hard way from Newmont House and from the Ruby Princess. And the only two people that we've heard apologies from are Gladys about the Ruby Princess and the Prime Minister around aged care. They've apologised and they've made representation to do better. You've got a Premier in Victoria who has plunged the nation into economic uncertainty, who refuses to apologise, let alone take responsibility for what 2 inquiries, I think already, or at least one, have been able to point the finger at his government's policy. It's a spectacular failure of public policy, and yet they're paying celebrities to tell people to follow the rules. And I saw a media release from the Victorian government the other day that said, oh, you need to be more active within your home. I mean, jam that straight where the sun doesn't shine. That is just showing such tone-deaf arrogance, and it's an insult, right?
Yes.
The other premiers, my own premier included, in the Premier of Queensland, it's arrogant populism in the face of pending elections. And I think that there will be a reckoning when people realise they're being unnecessarily constrained from seeing their families, farewelling their parents, being by the side of their loved ones when they need them, and an unconstitutional restriction at that. There is going to be a brutal reckoning, and I think the first one we'll see is in Queensland.
I think you should get off the fence and have an opinion, Gemma. I really do. I think
Can I get it in 2 minutes?
The super producer Rick's not yelling at me yet, so we must still be okay. Look, thank you very much for joining us today. I think we'd love to do this again with a little bit more time.
Yeah,
love to.
We can solve all the problems in the PR world and everything else. Gemma Tognini, GT Media, anything else to add?
No, I just want to say thank you for your really sage advice about focusing on relationships and who you are, because that can apply to any sort of business. Doesn't matter who you are. If you pick up those two little bites, then you've got something you can work with. So thank you.
Good on you, Gemma. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Enjoy the sunshine. We're getting a tiny bit of it here. I hope you get a lot more of it over there.
Take care, guys.
Well, she's pretty sharp.
Fantastic. We must talk to her more.
We must. There's a couple of very good points in there about, like you mentioned. But I mean, PR is a pretty murky area to a lot of people. It's not something that people do every day.
Yeah.
And the instinct is to go maybe to a social media sort of marketing company without really knowing what their capability is. There are some very, very good ones. But I'm keen to talk more with Gemma down the line about just how you can integrate that PR into your social and everything else.
It's just, again, getting back to basics about what's traditional, you know. We all want to do the cool, sexy thing and have the great Facebook and Instagram posts, but sometimes going back to what's been working for a very, very long time.
Imagine that.
Exactly right. You know, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's just the right thing to do, something that works, that people hear and see.